Hey, I wanted to jump on and talk a little bit about the spirit of fear. The spirit of fear. Now, this is not an exhaustive conversation because the spirit of fear can manifest in so many different ways. But I'm going to talk about a way that it manifested in my life that I had pushed down to the bottom of the bucket per se, but the Lord brought it back to me a couple of months ago, and I began to research it. And I'm going to do another video on this because I want to do it with my research and my paper in front of me so I can talk about the points that I have come across. So I'm going to give like a brief overview right now of this one manifestation of fear that had been haunting me, like hunting, Hunting, and haunting, Haunting, me. And it was the Boogie Man. The Boogie Man, y'all, okay? And the backdrop to this Boogie Man was whenever we were little, I remember that the older folks in my house or in my bloodline would say, if you don't go to sleep, the boogeyman's gonna get you. Or if you don't be quiet, the boogeyman's gonna get you. They would always threaten with this boogeyman. And as a small child, I remember what I would do is I would just like freeze up. It almost like takes the breath out of you. And it just like causes you to hold your breath, like suck up, like, oh my goodness, because it's a moment of terror. It's a moment of terror that was taking place. Now, as a child, I didn't know what was going on. I couldn't identify it. But as an adult, and I'm pretty much like a demon slayer, okay, like a demon buster. So I'm also like a forensic in the spirit realm, okay. I like to, if a thing is hunting me, or if it's like a spiritual element to something, I'm gonna like search in that spirit realm. I'm gonna like pay attention to what's happening whenever these things manifest, and I'm going to conquer it, okay? Because I am an overcomer in Christ. That's what the scriptures tell me. So this boogeyman manifested as this terror. It manifested in my life as like a stringent terror, okay? And it even had a smell to it. It even had a scent to it, because when I look back over my life and everything, let me turn some air on. When I look back over my life, I see how this thing like terrorized me in certain areas or certain timelines of my life. All right, so I'm just gonna like start with when I was a kid, a child, even a young teenager. I would have what you would say would be like, they might call them like out of body experiences, but it was really like, like nightmares and stuff like that. I was like tormented. I would be tormented with these demons. I would be tormented. And it had me like paralyzed, because I didn't want to like think about the spirit realm. I didn't want to like have nothing to do with devils. And the lingo and stuff that I'm using now is from a learned position. It's not from like an immature position where I don't know the lingo, I don't know the words. So I'm talking from a position of already knowing now that I know. So these spirits were like torment me, and it had me like terrorized, okay? And I remember whenever at a certain season of my life, I still had this fear factor. I had my first apartment by myself, and I would like be trying to clean up, and if advertisement for a scary or horror movie would come on the radio, I would just like go into like a terror, because it was that fear, oh my goodness, it's gonna get me, blah blah la la la. So and then if it was like a dark room, I would like look into the bedroom or whatever, and it's like I would be afraid that the exorcist, the girl from Exorcist, was in there like looking at me. So the fear factor was strong, although I didn't know how to put words to it. So I remember when I was probably around 30 something, I remember that I was like at home alone and everything, and I was like afraid. I was like, oh my goodness, because it wouldn't always manifest the way that it did, but this day it manifested, and I was just sitting there. It was getting dark. I had moved into a new house. Me and my ex-husband now, we have moved into a new house and everything, and he had to go out of town. So I was like there alone, and it was getting dark, and all of a sudden I just got fearful. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm scared. What if something's in here and one of these, what? The mind was just racing. And I remember that eventually I got up enough strength to go ahead and, get ready for bed and everything. And I remember in the middle of the night, I perceived that something was running. And I woke up and I looked at my bedroom door, and I saw this little goblin, or I called it an elf for a long time, but now I know it was like a hobgoblin. I saw this little thing running around, just running down the hallway. I perceived it running around the hallway, but I saw it actually with my eyes whenever it came around the door post. And then I don't know if I passed out or what, but I woke up the next morning and I remembered it. And I was like, oh my goodness, what was that? So I let it go and everything. And then I kept living life. And I remember, years later, almost like 20 years later, I was divorced and stuff now, but I remember that I lived in a townhouse, and I had bought a townhouse, and I remember that when I first moved in there, I would smell this stench sometimes, and it was around my bed, in the bedroom, kind of like around my bed, the side that I sleep on. And I'd be like, what is that foul smell? It almost smelled like if a rat or something gets trapped in the wall and it's decaying, DACAYING, and you have to just like smell that smell until it finally evaporates. Now this is old school. This is real old school, like at your grandma's house. But it smelled like that. And then I'd be like, where is that smell coming from? It would be there, and then sometimes it wouldn't be there. It would be there, and then sometimes it wouldn't be there. But now I know that it's the stench, it's the scent of that waster spirit. It's a vagabond, it's a waster spirit. And it's also the Boogie Man, okay? It can be, it was the Bogey Man in like the older days, but when it came to America and everything, they started calling it the Boogie Man. And the Boogie Man is put in place to threaten kids or whatever into submission. But it's so much more realer than just a fairy tale or a threat that's just going to go out the door. This is a real thing that if it gets embedded in that kid like it did me, if it gets embedded, it becomes a tormentor. The scripture says that fear brings torment. And it also says, now the Lord didn't give us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of sound mind. And that we have the spirit of adoption, whereby we cry, Abba, Father. But I didn't know that back then. And then I didn't even remember this boogeyman thing until like months ago, probably about 4 months ago, whenever the Lord brought it to me. He just said, boogeyman. And then another time he said, waster spirit. And I said, oh my goodness. So I began to research it and to see what was like going on with it and stuff. And I was like, oh my goodness, this thing has been following me. And my mentor, one time, I remember I was walking up to her. Now before I walked up to her, about 2 months before that, I remember, because during about when I lived in that townhouse, that's whenever it was a lot of warfare. a whole lot of warfare that began to manifest, and it was fear. I mean, I was getting panic attacks, I was getting anxiety attacks, and whenever I would go into that townhouse, it's like I would just like freeze up. It was like a fear factor that was going on within me, and my mind was racing, my heart was racing because I was scared. And not every second and every minute of the day, but I would sometimes like be sitting at my desk at work and I could perceive whenever this force was like coming up behind me, and it would just like jump on my back, and it would throw me into like a panic attack until I started fighting it. Now, I did eventually fight it and find out what was going on, and began to fight this thing with the word. But I'm telling y'all from a stance of when I didn't know. All right. So when I would go into this townhouse, it was warfare in that townhouse. It was warfare. And it was like one of the darkest times of my life. It was dark because I felt like I didn't know what I was doing, because I couldn't fight this thing. I didn't know what I was fighting. So to fast forward, like about like 3 months before I getting ready to tell you the story about my mentor, about 3 months before that, I remember it just felt like pressure. It just felt like this something was like following me. And so I remember sometimes I would be like, and then I remember the Lord told me, he said, I want you to begin to blow out, because he was beginning to deliver me from this thing, okay? Because he was giving me knowledge of it, and he was beginning to deliver me. Because when this thing would come, it would just be like being inside of a balloon, a blown up balloon, and the helium and stuff is there, but you don't have no more room to like breathe in. So that's what it felt like. So I remember the Lord would say, breathe out. So at the beginning, I was like, all the time, I could be walking, I'd be like, and it was involuntary, whenever I would feel the breath coming, I would let it come out, but I wasn't making myself breathe. I just allowed myself to breathe. So I noticed at work or wherever, I'd just be like, then it would be a little relief. And then I'd be walking again, wherever I'm at. I could be in the grocery store, like picking up some sweet potatoes or something. I'd be like, but I knew that's what the Lord was telling me to do. But then at first it was like constant. But then as time went on, it became far and in between, it'd be like, and then I might not do it again for a while. But then I remember one day I was walking up to my mentor, and she mentioned the pressure. She said, how is the pressure? And then she said, I can feel it. And she blew out like that. And I knew that she knew because she did exactly what I knew that I was having to do. So she prayed for me and everything, and the Lord did a work on me. She even told me that the Lord had said that he did a work on me that night, okay? And that's whenever things began to shift and go the other way. So this pressure that was following me was the terror. It was the fear. It was the essence of that curse, of that Boogie Man that was coming from my bloodline, okay? So I hope this is setting somebody free, because I am like 56 right now. I'll be 57 in a couple of months. But I know that I'm not the only one that came from a generation of people saying that the Boogie Man is going to get you. Now, this newer generation, I'm not sure if they still use the terminology, but I know that the Boogie Man, it's like in all cultures and everything, they may call it different things, but it's the same terror, it's the same torment, it's the same fear factor. So I'm telling you this story just to bring awareness to this diabolic spirit, okay? Because it could have happened a long time ago whenever you were little, and then it got buried down, but it didn't go away. It did not go away. It is still a tormentor. If you haven't been delivered from it, it is still a tormentor, It is still a waster spirit. It wastes your life away. You can have so many gifts, you can have so many talents, but it's something that's stopping you, and it's that waster spirit. that's doing stuff in the background, doing stuff in the spirit realm, doing stuff to make you slumber, to make you slothful, to make you just abort mission. All right, so be aware of the Boogie Man. Be aware. All right, and before I get off of this video, I'm gonna try to find this picture. My brother, he was like a year older than me, but he passed away when he was 32. He had leukemia. So I remember when he passed away, my mom had a picture of him standing near a tree. The background was kind of dark, but he was standing near a tree and everything. And whenever we went to get the pictures, copies of the pictures, I think she ran about 2 or 3 copies for me and my sister, and maybe for her to have an extra one, I'm not sure. But I was looking in the car. She was in the driver's seat of her car, and I was looking at the picture, and I said, Mama, I said, look, I said, what is this? In the background, it was this face, it was this facial, it was this spirit behind him. And I said, what is this? And then she looked and she said, maybe it was something in the machine in Walmart or wherever where we got the copies made. And I looked at it, and then we looked at the original, and it was on the original copy. And I said, Mama, I said, the camera took a picture of this spirit. You know, and at that point I didn't know, because this was like in 1998 or 99. But then the Lord brought that picture back to me like in recent time. And I said, that was that doggone spirit that the camera just happened to catch. Because my brother, he had the same toil in life. His life was pretty much wasted away, kind of. He couldn't really get a jump on life. It was just like everything kept pulling him back. It was just, so that spirit was following him, and the camera caught the image of this spirit. So I remember like a couple of months ago, whenever the Lord started bringing this spirit back to me about the waster, the boogeyman, the vagabond spirit, the Lord brought this back to me. He brought that picture. And I said, oh my goodness. So when I was like researching, and I looked online at the images of the boogeyman, and how about one of those images looked like the image on that picture? And I was like, bingo, there you go. And I got mad. I was just like, that doggone spirit been like haunting and tormented my brother and blah, blah, you know. So I've been going at it, which the reason the Lord brought it to me is because where I live at now, I started smelling that sin again. I started smelling that stench, and I was like, what is that? What is that smell? So then, but it would be very faint, and then it would go away. And I figured it out, that that's the stench of that spirit. It's the stench of that spirit. So I've been fighting it. I've been like fighting it and telling my family members, some of them, about it and everything, because I'm gonna get them free too. But yeah, just be aware and be mindful that this spirit is a tormenting terror. It's a tormenting terror. So I'm gonna like I said, I'm gonna do another video so I can like talk about it with my notes in front of me, because I've been doing like research on this thing, because it's got to go. And you know, so yeah, so I hope everybody's doing well, and until we meet again, thank you.